At a gala, a man laughed and said, "She's mine," at the office. My wife laughed too. So I walked out and let the investigation speak for me.
They laughed when he said it. "She's mine at the office." The words cut through the music and chatter of the company gala like a razor. I was standing near the bar, my drink untouched, and I saw my wife. She threw her head back and laughed, louder than anyone else. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't offended. It was a comfortable laugh, a possessive one, as if she was in on the joke. I didn't say a word. I didn't walk over and confront him. I didn't even look at her again. I just turned and walked out. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped onto the terrace, and for the first time all evening I felt like I could actually breathe. 17 years of marriage, and it had become a punchline for men in expensive suits. Inside, she was still playing her part, the successful executive admired by everyone, completely untouchable. Outside, under the quiet stars, I made a single phone call. The voice on the other end was calm. "Are you ready?" she asked, after I quickly explained what had just happened. "Yes," I said, and the word felt heavy, final. I've been ready for a lot longer than I even admitted to myself. 20 minutes later, I walked back into the gala. My composure was back. I was calm. The keynote speaker for the evening had just arrived, and she was surrounded by a crowd of executives and board members. When she saw me, her expression changed. It went from polite recognition to genuine interest. We'd worked together years ago, quietly but very effectively. She knew what I was capable of. She knew how good I was at what I did. We spoke for a few minutes. It was professional, but it was intentional. And it was very, very visible. Across the room, I saw him freeze mid-sentence, the man who'd made the joke. I watched the color drain from his face as he leaned in to whisper something urgent to his boss. All that confidence he'd been wearing just moments before, it completely collapsed right there in real time. My wife noticed it too. Her eyes narrowed, trying to piece together why the entire mood of the room had suddenly shifted. She didn't know what was happening yet, but she was about to. For the past 6 months, I had been documenting everything. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about instinct. The late-night conferences. The hotel charges that were labeled as client meetings. The messages that started professional but slowly slipped into something far too personal. The money that just didn't quite add up. I took my time. I didn't rush. I confirmed every single detail. Anger fades, but evidence doesn't. At home, I played my part perfectly. The dependable husband. The quiet one. The man nobody would ever suspect because he never raised his voice, never demanded an explanation. She mistook my silence for weakness, and that's what made her careless. The official investigation started quietly the following week. It began with routine expense reviews, then came the policy audits, then the interviews. She came home that first night completely irritated. Complaining about corporate overreach and petty office politics. I just listened, I nodded, and then I asked her one simple question. "Did you do anything that violates company policy?" She snapped back at me, saying I was supposed to be on her side. "I am," I told her calmly. "I'm on the side of the truth." The next morning, her keycard to the office building stopped working. By Friday, the whispers around the office had turned into solid certainty. Her lover was suspended. Company accounts were frozen. Lawyers started appearing in the hallways. She came home early that day. Her makeup was streaked with tears, her hands were shaking, and she was holding a termination letter like it was written in a foreign language she couldn't understand. "They fired me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're accusing me of fraud." I looked at her and I asked her again, just as quietly as before, "Did you do it?" Her silence was the loudest confession I had ever heard. And then she started begging, but she wasn't begging for forgiveness. She was begging for my help, for my protection. She wanted me to fix it, just like I had fixed everything else in our lives for the past 17 years. And in that moment, something inside me finally and completely detached. Love doesn't survive that kind of entitlement. Trust doesn't survive that level of contempt. I won't, I said, and I can't. When the authorities eventually got involved, she called it a betrayal. I called it a consequence. The divorce was swift. I had been preparing for it long before she even knew she needed to. I had already separated our accounts. I had secured my assets. I had protected custody of our children. She was so busy trying to put out the fires she had started that she never noticed I had already closed all the exits. The trial came several months later. I didn't have to testify. I didn't need to. Documents don't lie. Recorded voices don't change their stories. When the verdict was finally read, she didn't look at her parents or her team of lawyers. She looked directly at me. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt nothing. Life after that kind of destruction is a lot quieter than you might expect. There was no big celebration, no victory lap. There were just mornings where the air in the house felt lighter, dinners without unspoken tension, nights where I could sleep without waiting to hear footsteps at midnight. I rebuilt my life slowly and intentionally. My work became meaningful again. My children started laughing freely without hesitation. Trust became something that was earned, not just assumed. One evening, long after the headlines and the gossip had faded away, I was standing on my porch, just watching the sun dip below the horizon. My phone buzzed. It was a simple message from someone who knew my whole story and had still chosen to stay. And I smiled. Because the man who once stood silently in a crowded room while another man claimed ownership of his wife, he didn't exist anymore. In his place was someone who understood a few simple truths with absolute clarity. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you command.